Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really powerful idea, moral ambition.
hmm
How can you, listening right now, really use your skills, your energy, to make a significant positive difference?
Yeah, big question.
We'll be pulling apart different examples, different views,
Yeah.
definitely nodding to Rutger Bregman's book, Moral Ambition.
The very thought-provoking read.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our mission in this deep dive, it's really to pull out the key insights, the practical ideas to help you amplify your impact. Doesn't matter what you do now, really.
And Bregman gives us a useful starting point, doesn't he? This framework.
Yeah.
4 categories for jobs
Right?
based on ambition and idealism. So you've got not ambitious and not idealistic.
Okay.
Then ambitious, but maybe not idealistic.
Right. Chasing success, but maybe not purpose.
Kind of, yeah. Then idealistic, but perhaps lacking that ambitious drive. And finally, the sweet spot, I guess, both ambitious and idealistic. It really makes you think about where your own work fits,
It really does. And it's quite a wake-up call when you see the research he brings in. Something like 8% of people feeling their jobs are just pointless.
Yeah, and another 17% who aren't convinced they're actually contributing anything meaningful to society.
That's a lot of people feeling unfulfilled, isn't it?
It is. And if you zoom out, this connects to what Bregman calls a colossal waste of talent, drawing on Benjamin Lockwood, the economist.
Right. Lockwood's research about graduates going into fields where the societal value is, questionable. It's pretty striking stuff.
It is, and it even suggests some jobs might have a net negative impact.
Yeah, the figures he quotes are quite something, like corporate lawyers potentially taking away $30,000 in value each year.
And commercial bankers even more, like $100,000.
Wow.
Of course, Lockwood emphasizes the opportunity cost, too. What else could those really smart people be doing,
Exactly. It makes you question how we define success, doesn't it? Even in fields we think are vital, like medicine.
Right. Bregman mentions this sense of dissatisfaction sometimes, where, very advanced, very expensive procedures might only slightly extend life for a few.
Or where a lot of medical interventions might actually be unnecessary.
Yeah. It really forces you to think about priorities.
It does. You see so much cleverness going into, let's be honest, pretty trivial consumer stuff sometimes. We've all clicked buy on things we didn't need. But Bregman asks that big question. What if that same talent, that energy, was aimed at the huge global issues? Like the 5.4 million preventable child deaths every year. What could happen then?
It's a powerful contrast. And interestingly, he then pivots to look at something like the woke movement,
Okay.
suggesting it can sometimes be an example of idealism that maybe hasn't fully grasped the ambition part, often focusing on, say, online activism.
Right. Let's dig into that carefully. It's not saying online stuff is pointless, obviously.
Yeah, no.
But he seems to draw a line between, getting likes and shares and the really hard graft of building effective organizations.
Or achieving real legislative change, yeah. It's that drive to turn ideals into actual results that he suggests might sometimes be missing.
Okay, so that sets the stage. How does this moral ambition actually, play out?
Yeah.
He gives the story of Thomas Clarkson.
Ah, yes. A great example. Someone whose moral compass wasn't just innate, it was ignited by, sheer effort.
It's amazing, isn't it? He enters this Latin essay contest, doesn't really know much about slavery, just wants to win.
Right.
But the research for that essay just completely changed him, led to a lifelong fight against abolition. It wasn't just a phase, it was his life's work.
But, and this is crucial, Bregman points out the intensity of it all. Clarkson basically burned out by age 33.
Yeah, the physical and emotional toll was immense.
Which is such an important reminder, isn't it? If you're fighting for a better world, you can't just collapse halfway through. Self-care isn't selfish in that context.
Absolutely not. It makes me think of that Margaret Mead quote.
Oh, the small group of thoughtful, committed citizens.
Exactly. Never doubt that a small group can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. It really backs up Bregman's idea that big change usually comes from a minority who choose the hard path.
And it's easy to feel small, isn't
Yeah.
it, on a planet with billions of people? But Bregman counters this. He points out that actually most wealthy people don't use their wealth for really high-impact stuff.
Right. It often goes on predictable luxuries, cars, houses, whatever.
Exactly. It's not usually funding, say, clean water projects on a massive scale.
It's a stark contrast. He then looks at the Holocaust, at people who resisted the bystander effect.
And what drove them often seems to boil down to this question, can I live with myself if I do nothing?
That personal reckoning.
Yeah, it pushed them to act, unlike others who maybe stayed quiet out of fear or just wanting to keep things comfortable.
And then there's Arnold Dow's. His methods were, well, unconventional, deceptive even.
Right, to protect Jews. It highlights that sometimes when facing real evil, you might need tactics that aren't straightforwardly nice.
It's complicated territory.
It is. And this idea of taking action, even small steps, links to what Bregman calls moral infection.
Okay, what's that?
He uses the example of inventors during the Industrial Revolution in Britain. Innovation wasn't just isolated genius, it spread. People inspired each other.
Ah, like ideas catching on. Makes sense.
And related to that is the simple act of starting, just getting going.
Crucial.
Bregman reminds us that even Martin Luther King Jr. was initially reluctant to lead the Montgomery bus boycott.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so even great leaders can start with hesitation. The key is starting anyway.
And it's important to broaden our idea of what moral ambition looks like, isn't it? It's not just marching.
Exactly. Bregman talks about radical nerds.
Love that term.
Me too. These are the people working behind the scenes with data, research, policy proposals.
The less visible stuff, maybe, but potentially huge impact, building the systems for change.
Precisely, which connects to Peter Thiel's analogy, the cult versus the consulting firm.
Okay, explain that one.
Thiel's point is that sometimes you need that intense, focused mission, something that might even look a bit weird from the outside, like a cult, to achieve really big things. A consulting firm might have broader reach, but less focused intensity.
Right, and history's full of examples, isn't it?
Yeah.
Things we take for granted now started as radical, weird ideas.
Absolutely. Think about abolition again. Bregman highlights the role of entrepreneurs, Quakers, people focused on practical organizing, not just arguing.
Getting things done on the ground.
Yeah. And then you have someone like Ralph Nader, a masterclass in pragmatic moral ambition.
His method was quite specific, wasn't it?
Very. Expose the injustice meticulously, then propose clear solutions, then build coalitions to push them through.
And his raiders. They weren't protesting in the usual way.
No, their weapons were memos, letters, legal filings. It was about using the system or challenging it through its own processes.
And that actually created a whole new career path, didn't it? The public interest lawyer.
It did. Nader actively encouraged students to take that path, to use their legal skills for good.
So, shifting society's views. Influencing the Overton window, as they call it.
Right, the range of acceptable ideas. Bregman discusses different ways to do that. You have the radicals pushing boundaries.
And then the more pragmatic types, willing to compromise for incremental gains.
Exactly. It's often a tension between those approaches.
Which brings us to Rosa Parks. We all know the basic story, but it's more complex.
Much more. Bregman emphasizes her long history as an activist before that day on the bus and the planning by the Women's Political Council.
So it wasn't just a spontaneous moment of being tired.
No, it was strategic. They were waiting for the right person, the right moment to launch the boycott they'd been planning for months. Timing and symbolism were key.
Fascinating. Okay, so to understand how change really happens, Bregman points out these 5 illusions. What's the first one?
The illusion of awareness, thinking that just telling people about a problem is enough.
Yeah, we know that doesn't always work, do we? The belief-behavior gap.
Exactly. People care about animal welfare, but eat meat. Worry about climate change, but fly frequently. It happens.
He also mentions political hobbyism.
Right. Engaging with politics like it's a spectator sport, consuming news rather than actually doing anything.
And that helps explain why polls don't always predict outcomes, like the abortion debate he mentions.
A dedicated, organized minority can often achieve more change than diffused, widespread opinion.
Okay, illusion number 2.
The illusion of good intentions. Simply meaning well isn't enough. Results are what count.
You need effectiveness.
Right. He gives the example of that charity, No Lean Season. They shut down their program when the evidence showed it wasn't actually working effectively.
That takes courage, admitting failure like that.
It does, but it's crucial for real impact. Illusion 3 is the illusion of the right reasons. Meaning sometimes good things happen for, let's say, mixed motives. Or activists use arguments that aren't purely about the core moral issue.
Like Clarkson appealing to economic interests back then.
Exactly. It was strategic. It also warns against being too rigid, having these purity tests in movements.
Yeah, that could alienate potential allies, can't it? And lead to infighting.
Definitely. Bregman notes how that's hampered some progressive groups.
Okay, 4th illusion.
The illusion of inherent synergy. The idea that if we all have good values, things will just magically work out together.
Doesn't usually happen automatically, does it?
No. Strategy and hard work are needed. He points to movements like Occupy, the Women's March, Black Lives Matter. Huge awareness-raising moments, but sometimes the concrete, lasting change is harder to achieve.
And the fifth illusion.
This one's about understanding individual motivations. He uses the story of Gustav Wiegert.
The man who didn't salute Hitler in that famous photo.
That's the one. A powerful symbol of defiance, yes. But his refusal was actually based on his specific religious beliefs.
Ah, so not necessarily about solidarity with the victims of the regime, but his own conscience.
Exactly. It's a reminder that actions can be significant, but the why behind them can be complex. Not always what we assume.
Okay, so putting all that together, where does it lead?
It leads Bregman to advocate for realistic idealism.
Realistic idealism. So aim high, but be smart about how you get there.
Pretty much. Be ambitious for a better world, but be pragmatic, strategic, learn from what works and what doesn't.
And he gives us Rob Mather's story to illustrate this. A successful executive who had a turning point.
Yeah, after his daughter's accident and then seeing a documentary about malaria, it made him question his path.
He had a conventional background, right? Good education, successful career.
Very much so. But he felt something was missing. Like, is this it? Is this my contribution?
So he started World Swim Against Malaria, initially for his daughter.
Initially, yeah. But it quickly grew into something much bigger, a mission to save lives globally.
And he was quite methodical about choosing malaria, wasn't he?
Extremely. He researched different causes, landed on malaria because, well, the scale was huge, 3,000 kids dying daily.
Unbelievable.
But there was a simple, effective solution, mosquito nets. And crucially, it was relatively underfunded compared to the scale of the problem.
And that's where GiveWell comes in. Holden Karnofsky's organization.
Exactly. GiveWell does rigorous, evidence-based charity evaluations, and they found the Against Malaria Foundation, which Mather supported and helped grow, to be incredibly effective.
The numbers are staggering, aren't they? Over $700 million raised, 300 million nets.
Reaching 600 million people, and Bregman tells an amazing story from Uganda, West Nile region, where malaria cases dropped 98% after net distribution.
Wow. Just wow. That's tangible impact.
Absolutely data-driven, effective philanthropy.
Then there's Joey Savoy. He started focused on anti-bullying.
Yeah, and his insights there, especially about bystanders, got him thinking bigger, questioning the education system, and more.
He developed this master plan. Sounds ambitious.
It was.
Yeah.
Tackle neglected global problems using data and an entrepreneurial approach. He even fundraised for AMF early on.
And GiveWell encouraged him to start his own thing.
They did. Which led to charity entrepreneurship. Really focused on research, identifying the most effective neglected interventions, like creating these detailed prioritization spreadsheets.
Okay.
That research led to Charity Science Health, which grew fast in India.
But he didn't stop there.
No. He saw the power of mentoring others, which led to Fortify Health even bigger impact on anemia, congenital defects.
And they keep adapting, right, using new research.
Constantly, like using reminder texts and local ambassadors for vaccinations. That got integrated into Suvita, which merged Charity Science Health with another group from his network. It's about continuous improvement.
These stories, they really show progress is possible, don't they? Bregman reminds us about the huge drops in child mortality, extreme poverty over history.
Yeah, it's proof that large-scale positive change can happen. It's not just a dream.
He mentions Jonas Salk, obviously, the polio vaccine.
And that incredible moment, could you patent the sun? Refusing to profit from it.
But then also Viktor Zidov. Less famous, but huge impact.
Right. At the WHO, pushing for the global eradication of smallpox. Hugely ambitious, and they actually did it.
And moral ambition isn't always glamorous, is it? Like the washing machine.
Helen Lewis's feminist heroine, yes. Or Catherine McCormick's fight for contraception access. Often behind the scenes, but world-changing.
And solar energy, too. Not just one invention.
No, a whole chain. Martin Green's research, then policy shifts like Hans-Josef Fell's solar premium in Germany.
And then Xi Jinping scaling up production in China. Science, policy, business, all needed.
Exactly. It shows how different elements have to come together.
Yet, despite all this, there's often this pessimism today, isn't there?
There is. Bregman argues we need to dream bigger, imagine a radically better future. Technology has risks, sure, but also huge potential for good.
And how do you fight that feeling of being insignificant? One person against huge problems.
He brings in Peter Singer's analogy, the child drowning in the pond.
Right. If you saw that, you'd act, wouldn't you? No matter the cost to your shoes or whatever.
Singer and effective altruism basically say, we're in that situation globally. We can help. So how do we do it most effectively? Maximize our positive impact.
Which leads to power laws, the idea that some actions have massively more impact than others.
Exactly. Focusing on the biggest problems, the best solutions, can give you disproportionate results. Like, one effective altruist might have the impact of 50 people supporting less effective causes.
That's like Rob Mather switching from helping one person to fighting malaria. The scale just explodes.
And that $5,000 figure from GiveWell to save a child's life via AMF, it makes the potential impact very real, very concrete.
You know, Bregman does acknowledge criticisms of effective altruism, right? FTX, questions about inequality.
Yes, he does. It's important to grapple with those critiques. It's not presented as a perfect, flawless movement.
But he also gives historical examples of philanthropy driving change.
Right, like George Francis Train funding Elizabeth Cady Stanton's paper, or Madam C.J. Walker supporting anti-lynching work, money helping progressive causes.
And Charles Garland refusing his inheritance.
Amazing story. Insisting it go to unpopular causes. That's radical moral ambition.
So the point is, money and moral ambition need each other.
Very much so. Smart philanthropy can drive systemic change, especially for causes governments or businesses might ignore.
Okay, this connects to expanding the moral circle, doesn't it? Who we care about.
Yes. He uses the history of slavery to show how limited that circle used to be. Who was considered fully human, worthy of moral concern.
That anecdote about Captain Snellgrave and the King of Ardra, it's shocking how different their views were on enslaving a child.
It really highlights how moral boundaries shift over time. What seems normal in one era can be horrifying later.
And even though our circle has expanded, we still tend to think we're morally superior, don't we? Across different cultures and times.
It seems to be a common human trait, which makes Bregman ask, what are we doing now that future generations will condemn?
And he points to industrial animal agriculture.
Yeah. Using the 3 Ns often used to defend past atrocities, it's normal, natural, necessary.
There's a huge disconnect, isn't there, between consumers and the reality of factory farms.
Massive. He shares stats about what people don't know and how kids often have a more intuitive moral reaction against harming animals.
And there's a link back to abolitionism.
Yes. Figures like Benjamin Lay, Anthony Benezet Quakers, who were early advocates for both abolition and animal welfare.
Then there's Leah Garces, the animal rights activist. Her approach was different.
Very. Building bridges, understanding the perspective of a chicken farmer, Gene Watts, finding common ground, a more nuanced way to try and expand that moral circle.
Shifting perspective now, Bregman talks about the great acceleration, human growth, technology.
Yeah, since the Industrial Revolution, suggesting we might be just at the start of an even bigger period of change.
Which puts a huge responsibility on us right now.
Immense. The choices we make could shape things for generations, maybe centuries to come.
And it's not just climate change we need moral ambition for. There are other existential threats.
Definitely. Nuclear weapons are still here. Engineered pandemics are a growing risk.
He mentions Andy Weber's work on nukes. Hard to get recognition for preventing disasters that don't happen.
Exactly. And Dr. Pardis working on pandemic prevention, aiming to make them a thing of the past. That's ambition.
And Dr. Amy Penu, within that Apollo program for biodefense idea.
Yeah, her vision includes early detection, rapid response, but also this massive focus on cleaning up our air.
Air quality, indoor and outdoor.
Both. Highlighting the huge, often overlooked health burden from air pollution globally.
It all underlines that progress isn't guaranteed, is it? It takes work.
Hard work. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of these threats.
But he contrasts COVID, which is bad enough,
with how much worse future pandemics could be, which adds urgency.
He uses JFK's moonshot speech as inspiration.
Right. Tackling hard problems not because they're easy, but because they're hard, as a way to bring out our best.
But he also brings it back down to earth a bit. Warns against seeking pure moral perfection.
Yes, referencing Orwell's critique of Gandhi's asceticism. Being human involves flaws, loyalties, enjoying life.
Morality matters, but it's not everything.
Exactly. He advocates for enthusiasm, a lust for life, as better motivators than guilt or shame.
So the final thought is, well, maybe someday we're fine just the way we are.
Most of us probably aren't there yet. We haven't reached the limits of our moral ambition. We're still wasting talent that could be used for good.
So, wrapping up this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot. The potential we all have for impact.
The need to prioritize, to focus on what really matters, often the neglected problems.
Expanding that moral circle continuously.
The power of working together, collective action.
And needing that mix of big ambition and down-to-earth pragmatic strategies. Realistic idealism.
And really the core message, the takeaway we hope you get from this is pretty direct, isn't it?
It is. Stop wasting your talent. Start making a difference.
Yeah. Find your way to contribute meaningfully.
And maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Building on that idea of future generations and big risks. What single, maybe overlooked problem, if you and others tackled it with real focused ambition? What could have the biggest positive impact on humanity's long-term future?
That's a big question to ponder.
It is. Maybe exploring some of the people and ideas we talked about could be a starting point for you. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.